If I can get some cool air down here, we'll all be singing my praises.
You got that right.
I'm not sure how this is going to play out. I've got to tell you. So this is a very shallow, cold air mass that's coming in out of Canada. Shallow meaning it's only a few hundred feet deep. Computer models and humans have a difficult time forecasting the exact outcome of these early season shallow cold air masses. We just do and the computers do. So there may still be some surprises in how this forecast plays out. Let's take a look at this. Here's the jet stream. Cold air is to the north of the jet, warm air is to the south. That's why we follow it. It's so important to our weather and how it's going to feel here. Now, on Thursday and Friday of last week, this jet stream was forecast to take the dip right here across central Texas, and that was having the models forecasting 50s here in Houston for lows. Well, that forecast for the jet has changed. Now the trough axis is going to be further west, and because of that, the coldest of the air is going to be further west than we had first anticipated. This is having some interesting impacts. First of all, it's lit up the western mountains with winter storm warnings tonight and tomorrow. That includes Denver, Colorado. There's the snow. It's coming down fast and furious across Casper, Wyoming right now. There's Denver. There's Pueblo. That's going to head south-southeast. And tomorrow morning, snowflakes are expected to be flying in Denver. By the time the snowstorm here is all said and done, by Wednesday, they're going to have 9-7 inches of snow. That's in the foothills and the lowland areas. They may have higher snow totals in the higher elevations. It's a real winter storm. So how is this now forecast to play out temperature-wise in Texas? Well, because that trough axis is further west now, that is making the computer models believe that the cold air is going to be further to the west, and that's what you see here. This is Wednesday's temperature forecast. We'll be in the 80s and 90s. By 3 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, they'll be in the 50s up in Amarillo. See how the colder air is further west? Now, this front is still forecast to come through and lower humidity and make things less hot. 79 degrees forecast for Thursday at 11 a.m. That would be nice, but it wouldn't be as cool as we were hoping for last week. There's where the really chilly areas out there in West Texas, so the cold air forecast to be further west. But I have to tell you, models have a hard time seeing that shallow cold air mass. There may still be some changes in that forecast. Tropics are busy but quiet. There are two tropical storms, Paulette and Renee, in the open Atlantic, but they're heading for the open water and they won't be impacting land, so we don't have to worry about Paulette and Renee. In the morning, your futurecast should be quiet for back to school. I'm not expecting rain in the morning, but look, by 10 a.m., showers forming on the coast. By noon, they're moving inland. You're going to need your umbrella from lunchtime through the afternoon, and then they race north by 4 o'clock, and then once again, they'll settle down in the evening. So tomorrow, there will be a decent rain chance during the day. 40% chance for a scattered thunderstorm. Wednesday is about the same score. Thursday is that transition day. We'll watch and see how much of that air can push in here. I'm going to go with less humid and a little more comfortable Friday and Saturday. So at least we get a little something, but not the brunt of the cooler air like West Texas will.
All right, we'll hang in there. We can deal with this Friday and Saturday's cooler air. Thanks so much, David.